This is a super exciting new lens in the RF ecosystem. Canon are releasing 3 new lenses today. We've got the 200-800, with the RFS 10-18, but this is the one that, oh my goodness, this excites me. Now this is the new RF 24-105 f2.8 IS lens. Now let's just break that down for just a second, because this is a lens that I don't remember getting more excited about a lens for a very, very long time. You've got the perfect kind of combination of all round the lenses. The 24-105 focal length, which is just, I mean, normally you're talking 24-105 f4, and I would use that for all kinds of stuff, photo and video. And then you've got the f2.8 aperture, which you'd usually see, of course, on something like a 24-70. Now I use a 24-70 day in, day out. Video like this, I'm using a 24-70 right now, landscape, portrait, street photography, food photography, product photography. It is just always my go-to lens, as I'm sure it is for a lot of people. But I also used to use a 24-105 a lot, f4, again for video, landscape, portrait, loads of different stuff. And this brings those two elements together perfectly. This might be the perfect all-rounder lens that you can just leave on your camera. And there's image stabilization in the lens as well. And we'll get to this in a bit, the image quality looks really, really lovely. So, okay, it's a little bit bigger than your sort of standard 24-70. It's a little bit bigger than your 24-105, but then it is doing a lot more. And with that extra reach comes a lot more versatility for the kinds of shots that you can go for, whether you are talking photo or video. And you can tell when you use this lens, it has absolutely been designed with video in mind just as much as photography, which makes a lot of sense since this is just so unbelievably versatile for video. I had it on the front of the Canon R5 and it worked extremely well with that camera in terms of things like autofocus, in terms of combination with the in-body image stabilization in the camera as well. That was just a dream to actually use. So you can absolutely use this handheld, obviously for photography, but for video as well. Even if you're moving, even if you're walking a little bit, you're gonna have nice, really, really, really solid image stabilization, which does allow you to get some nice smooth movement in your shots without having to rely entirely on a gimbal. And even though this is a bigger lens, it doesn't feel crazy heavy in the hands. It's actually weighted really well. I think it feels like the center of gravity is weighted more towards the camera, which makes it much more comfortable to use. But it also means that, again, if you're shooting handheld, trying to get smoother shots, that's a lot easier. Now, of course, you've got that constant f2.8 aperture all the way up to 105mm. That means you can get some really, really lovely out of focus areas, some lovely bokeh in your shots. This can be fantastic for portraits as well as pretty much everything else, right? Landscape, your food photography in the studio, product photography, out and about, even street photography. I could imagine shooting with this would be very, very nice. Sure, it's not the most subtle lens that you're gonna go out with, but I like using a slightly longer lens and having that extra reach up to 105mm, but still keeping it f2.8. You're gonna be able to get some tasty shots. I actually think I'd be comfortable using this for whole portrait sessions, not having to switch over to a prime lens. And the versatility of being able to do that, having the zoom to be able to change the framing of your shot, change what's in the background, change what's included, but be able to still get that separation of subject and background is huge. It's something that really can't be overstated. That is a really, really impressive thing to see in a lens like this. Now, I haven't had the lens for that long. I've only had it for kind of about a day. The weather genuinely has been unbelievably bad. It's been really difficult to go on and actually properly put this to the test, but I have managed to dodge the rain a little bit to try and take some shots, to try and use this a little bit for video. In terms of image quality, this is absolutely stunning. I'm not surprised. It's an L lens, so it has a certain reputation that you would expect to see with a lens like this, and it absolutely delivers. I'm so glad that that's the case as well. I didn't have any problems with vignetting or distortion or anything like that. Not that I really expected it, but it's just so nice to see that it is lovely and sharp right across the frame, right down at f2.8, and of course stopping down as well. But I'm so glad to see it because this is just gonna be such a good, oh, this is gonna be the workhorse. This is gonna be the one. This is gonna be the lens. I mentioned as well as image stabilization in the lens. So you've got up to 5.5 stops of IS actually in the lens with 3 different modes to choose from depending on the kind of shots you're actually trying to achieve. I love having IS in the lens because I love the in-body image stabilization in something like the R5. It works extraordinarily well. It's very, very strong and very powerful. But I love having optical IS in a lens. And with a slightly longer focal range, I think it's great to see. It really carries over everything that you love from the 24-105 f4 and puts it in an f2.8 lens. Oh, You can tell I'm really into this lens. Actually, inside the lens, you've got 4 UD elements, 3 aspherical elements as well as superspectra coatings and a fluorine coating, keeping things like ghosting and flaring to an absolute minimum, and just overall keeping that optical image quality at the level you would expect for an L lens. And let's touch on the actual design of the lens. Obviously, I mentioned it is a little bit bigger than the 24-70 f2.8, which makes sense. It is a little bit bigger than the 24-105 f4 as well, but it does give you lots of room on the lens for all kinds of controls. So you've got a nice big tactile zoom ring, which feels really good to use. You've got a dedicated aperture ring on the lens here as well with an iris lock, which is really useful. A nice sized manual focus ring, which again feels good. And that's important because this lens is designed very much with video in mind as well. It's important to have that actually on the lens. And something else that's really important to mention is that this is entirely internal zoom, which is great for stuff like weather sealing. It's great for just sort of protection from dust and stuff like that. But it's also nice because it keeps the size of the lens very consistent. And then of course you've got the control ring at the front, which you would expect to see on an RF lens like this. So you could have that set to be something like ISO control, especially since you've got the dedicated aperture ring on the lens as well. And then you've got all your different controls for things like the image stabilization, AF, MF, and of course the focus length as well. I did notice the aperture ring doesn't have a click and declick option, which is interesting, purely because I just expect to see that now, I guess. It does make sense if this is really designed with that video function in mind, because I guess from a video perspective, you probably would have this declicked, and it does make it nice and smooth, but sometimes it's nice to be able to change that. I guess that's really my only criticism of the lens. Otherwise, this is everything I've wanted from a lens like this. I would never stop using this. I would pop this on the front of an R5 and just have the time of my life every single day. It's difficult not to get overexcited with the lens. You know, you've got 2 custom function buttons on the lens itself. You've got the tripod collar as well, which is great. You love to see it on a lens of this sort of size as well. I'm just very excited that this lens exists. And this for me really sums up what Canon have been saying for a long time, which is the RF mount allows them to do different things than they were doing with the EF mount, right? That it's better image quality, yes. We've seen that in a lot of the different RF lenses that, for example, the Nifty 50, right? The 50mm f1.8, the RF version is not just a nice cheap 50mm prime lens. It is significantly improved optically from the EF version. But like I say, Canon have said for a long time, they're able to do different things with the RF mount. And this feels like absolute rock solid proof that that is true, and I couldn't be more excited about it. If you are looking for that go-to lens, for that all-rounder lens that you can just rely on for pretty much everything, I think you're going to be hard pressed to beat this, to be honest. And if you've got a camera like an R5, an R6 II, even an R3, I think this is just got to be up there as one of the better lenses that you can really have for that camera. I know for sure that is the lens that I would choose. Now you can check out the pricing, the spec, everything you want to know about the lens in detail by following the link down in the description. Go and check it out. Don't forget to like and subscribe as well, because we've got new content all the time. I'll see you in the next video, but until then, as always, thanks for watching.